Let's welcome on our guest line freelance photographer Bradley Rayford. Bradley, thank you very much for joining us today on the Mike Gallagher Show. How you doing?
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
What a scary time that must have been for you. Tell us what you saw and where you were standing when these officers were shot.
Scary is an understatement.
I'll bet.
I was standing about 10 to 15 feet away from the officers, along with myself and other photojournalists. About a group of like 5 of us still had our setup set up. The protest last night started around 8 o'clock, and it kind of like progressed from there. At the most, around 150. Give or take a few people were the most of the protesters. And, of course, you had the cops, about 50 to 60 cops out there.
So there were, say that again, there were about 50 protesters and about 50, 60 cops?
150, at least 150 at one point.
Oh, I'm sorry, protesters.
Protesters. At one point, there were at least 150 out here.
Gotcha. And Bradley, what are they? Is it the same kind of protest that we've been seeing from Ferguson in terms of, you know, the allegations of racism and bias within the department?
It's the same kind of protest. Last night, it was more so a dual protest, I guess, celebratory protest, as well as protest like we want more. We just don't want the people that resigned. We want more people.
And celebratory because the police chief resigned.
Yes, actually, someone actually brought out some champagne and was passing around to some of the protesters.
Wow.
Jokingly, of course, but I guess just to torment the cops. But it was you can imagine the atmosphere when that was happening.
Very tense. So what happened? What time did the shots ring out, and where did you see the shooters at all? Tell us what happened then.
Okay, so of course the protests naturally died down as they always do. They just kind of people just go home. Which was looking like last night. Actually, some of the journalists were contemplating leaving or not because it was just we knew that from protesting past, this is usually the time we just time to leave. There's nothing else going to happen, and so we were thinking about leaving. And as we got done with the conversation, we heard what sounded like a firecracker. It was loud and from a distinct location. So we looked up to the top of the hill, and a couple more gunshots were fired, and that's when we saw the muzzle fire from the flash from the muzzle of a gun.
And were they in a house, or was it in a car?
From what I saw, it was dark, so I don't believe it was inside a house. Either in a car or on the street standing. I can imagine they're either probably on the street standing with a car waiting by, or just from my vantage point, I don't believe they're inside a house. It's kind of looking at how the streets set. It's kind of impossible for someone to shoot outside the house where the gunfire came from and what we saw.
I see. So then did you know immediately that officers were hit?
I did not. Believe it or not, the bullets went right past my head.
Wow.
So they had me kind of in shock for a brief moment. You ever heard? I'm sure some of your viewers have heard like the whooshing
that
sound.
Kind of whooshing, only in the movies, thank goodness.
And it's something you cannot miss. So I can imagine I was in shock for a second when that was happening. But I didn't realize that a cop was shot until I got behind took cover behind the brick wall, which is in front of the Ferguson Police Department. And that's when I saw one of the officers on the ground. And
one, I believe, one officer was reported was shot in the face. One was shot in the shoulder, right?
Yeah. So there's a municipality in St. Louis called Wester Grove. It's near St. Louis City, which is a little ways from Ferguson, not too far, but a little ways, at least 15 miles away. But he's one of the officers that was shot. He's a 32-year-old, 5-year veteran of the force, and also a St. Louis County, which is a St. Louis County police officer was shot as well in the shoulder.
And did you see the injured officers?
I saw the injured officer. I saw the Webster Grove officer because he was right in front of us. It was almost hard to not see him. He was visibly in pain on the ground, clearly in pain. And you can see the pain on the faces of the officers too, trying to tend to his aid. They're clearly frustrated and trying to do the best they can to comfort him.